Hi, this is Rod Gels from the Rock Band Program Podcast. We are with Logan Summey. Logan Summey and I do things at Rock Mill because he brought me in, or I don't know how that happened, but we do the rock thing at Rock Mill.
It's
But
just
Rogan,
whatever it is involves rock.
yes, yeah. So he saw that I was involved in the rock, and we got to do stuff together. So that was a couple years ago, and ever since we've yeah, that's our relationship. So anyway, but Logan has a really cool story. Lot, I'm a fan of the whole thing because whatever. We'll get into that later. But anyway, so let's start from the very beginning, like music in general. Like, what are your earliest memories? How did you get started in this whole thing?
I mean, listening to music, obviously, my parents were not really musically inclined at all.
Mhm.
So they obviously my dad, he listened to like AC/DC and Def Leppard and Kiss and like all like stuff that
Old head music.
yeah, that your parents grew up on, you know what I mean?
White
So
Snake.
yeah, White Snake, yeah. So
Okay.
it started with that, and I thought it was super cool. And then there was this band called Jackal, which was very similar to AC/DC, at least in my opinion, a
Yeah,
little bit more edgy.
with a chainsaw.
Yeah, with a chainsaw, so that was super cool. But we'd go to like family picnics or something, or like work parties that my dad was in. Like two of the guys there played guitar and drums, and they would always cover these Jackal songs, and I was like fascinated with it. I was like, this is so cool. My dad's always playing these songs in the truck. Like I'm like 8, 9, 10 years old. I think this is great. So that's kind of where it all started. And then from there, it turned out that my neighbor, who was Tommy Cooper, played in a bunch of bands
I
locally.
know Tommy. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
so
wonderful.
his parents lived beside my parents, and he toured and played bass and all that stuff. And I remember being like 10, 11 years old and going up to his basement garage window and like looking through the window and being like, this is incredible. Like this is there's like three guys in there playing music, and I thought it was so cool. And then after like 2 or 3 times of doing that, they caught me. Like they were like, "What? Like who's this kid? Like who keeps looking in the window?" And they came
Yeah.
out, like gave me a CD and did that whole thing. I thought it was like the coolest thing
What band
ever.
was he into at that time?
A band called Running from Dharma, which actually did decently well from what I understand. I mean, at
Yeah.
least in my eyes at that age, I
They
thought
were
they
rock stars,
they
probably.
were rock gods. But no, it was really cool, and yeah, that's just kind of really how it all started. And then from there, it all kind of just fell into place. I was like, I want to play school or play drums in school, and I started snare drum doing that, and then I got a kit a couple years later and started taking formal lessons doing that.
Okay.
And then it just kind of
You
blew up
started
from
off snare learning in school.
yeah, that was where I started the formal training. Now, before that, I did have an old snare drum that my parents gave me because my dad did play drums when he was in school, but he never went past like middle school with it. If even that, I don't think they
Yeah.
went past elementary school at all, actually.
Mhm.
But they had his old drum. It was this old drum. It was red. It was all the drums were all the hardware was rusted and all this
Yeah.
stuff. It was damn near falling apart. But that's how I started, man. And then the guy that my dad worked with that played drums and guitar at these company picnics and stuff like that was selling some stuff. And my dad got it for like my birthday or something. He brought me like an old kick drum pedal and another old snare drum. So now I have two snare drums and a kick drum pedal. So I turned one of my snare drums into a kick drum with this pedal that I had. And you gotta remember, you have like a 14-inch snare drum that's yay thick,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm using as a kick drum with no snare on it.
Yeah.
So that's where it really started, and that's when I started learning how to play the drums. It's self-taught at that point, and then
This was what? How old were you?
I mean, it would have been before fourth grade, so I would say third grade would have been an
Okay.
accurate. So however old you are in third grade, I
Yeah. Yeah.
mean, I to do the math would blow me away right now,
Yeah.
but
We're
I'm
the
sure
same.
that
Yeah. That's when I started, but yeah.
definitely in that I'd say like the 9 to 11, 9 to 12 window.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
might be
Hmm.
12 is probably a little bit too old. I was definitely a kid,
Yeah.
teetering around. And then I remember for Christmas one year they bought me like a ride cymbal, and then they bought me a pair of hats. So and now I have this like snare drum, I have this snare drum kick drum, and I have a ride cymbal and a set of hi-hats. And I mean, dude, if you're a kid that wants it, that's enough. Like that's all you need.
Right.
What else could you possibly want other than an actual drum set? But you don't know any different. You don't
Yeah.
know any better. And then I saw this thing called Blast. I don't know if you're familiar with Blast, but essentially it's like a hyped up, glorified, like marching, like drum and bugle corps thing. And I went to Hershey Theater and saw that in person and came home, and these guys were playing on like trash cans and old like PVC tubes and all this really cool stuff. And that was like, my dad like worked for a dairy, and he could get like 5-gallon water containers and brought some home for me. So I like cut them down to different sizes. They all had different pitches. And here I am like drumming in my basement on these old 5-gallon water drugs that are literally strung from the ceiling. Like, cause they were hanging, like, so that's what they did in that.
That is something I would do if I had the ability. Cause I just assembled a bunk bed in my house, taking it out of the house, and all these pieces of fence. They look like fencing, like with the springs and all that. So I'm like, I want to use this for a percussion like cage.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? That's where my brain is going. I'm not getting rid of this thing.
Yeah,
Percussion cage, like, but yeah,
that's cool.
yeah. So you started out like in school, learning in school, and then at some point, after Blast, was Blast the thing that really got you?
I'm trying to think. I have a drum head hanging here somewhere in the studio with a date that I saw that. Yeah, I don't. That was kind of like a thing that got me into like the drum line, like part of drumming, like the marching, doing that whole thing. Otherwise, I don't think. What's that?
How hard was that?
Drumming and marching band. I did not like it, but there was a movie that came out that was called I think it was called Drumline with
I have it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like what got me. I was like, oh, that's so cool, like to be a part of that. And then that's when I mean, that was in like high school or late middle school that I started to really find an interest in that. But I always thought that was like really cool. And like
I was gonna say, I was, yeah, I would love to do that someday, but I'm too old. But
it's hard, man. It's very demanding. I've always been a bigger fellow, wide set, and doing it. I mean, when you're young, you don't know any different, but it was really, I can never do it now. I mean, especially missing a leg. Like, there's no way I'd be able to march. It'd be cool if they did like a special drum line or something like that. With people with like
people like yourself.
Yeah, with like partial disabilities that are able to still live normal life. Obviously, like marching with a prosthetic leg would be extremely difficult. So
yes.
Yeah.
All right. So when did you get your first teacher? Who was your first teacher?
So I had my school instructor, which was teaching me, they were teaching me drum, like snare drum and concert bass drum and stuff like that. That was Mr. Semke, who no longer teaches. He's an old cat now. But then drum set wise, that's when I started like really getting into lessons. In 5th grade, I started taking drum lessons from a guy named Russ Leonardi, who you're friends with on Facebook. I see he's always liking your stuff, and I'm like, how really? Do you know him at all, or you just? I know. He's a really good dude, man. Great instructor. And when I was a kid, I was told that he's a monster on the drums, and he quite literally is a monster. He was a great instructor. He's really well orchestrated with how he taught, and it was just really good. And he was very personable, and he knew how to teach drums, man. That's what he was good at.
Yeah, that's what he loved.
Yeah, it's what he loved, and he still does. That's still his thing.
Does he still teach?
No, not so much anymore. I don't know what the story happened there was, but I did relink with him after our accident happened and stuff like that. So I took lessons from him from 5th grade all the way until I was a senior in high school, which that's a long time to work with someone. I mean, like with your students and stuff, I mean, to even keep a student around for 3 or 4 years that's a win, just because obviously interests change, everyone grows up, goes to college and all that stuff. And like, I spent, almost 7-8 years of my life with this guy every single week. So we developed a great relationship. He got to see me go from being a guy who plays snare drum in school to playing concert, jazz band, all that stuff. And then like, doing marching band, and then eventually shifting into like the rock and roll realm and playing. So he saw every transition as a drummer.
He must be really proud.
I think he is. I think he is. I've reconnected with him in the past, and I think he is proud. So
that's wonderful. So So when did you start playing with people? Like not marching band or not like when did you start? Did you have garage bands when you were growing up?
Yeah. So the first band I was in was a three-piece band. It was drums, bass, and guitar. I started that in seventh grade. And we really didn't play much of our own songs. I think we dabbled with writing our own stuff. But we played a lot of Blink-182, Newfound Glory, like stuff that like my generation grew up on. Like,
I'm so old.
dude, but you're not though, because you still know who all those bands are and
Yeah,
you've heard all their songs, and I'm
yeah,
sure you taught all those
I
songs to
did.
your kids.
I
So
still do.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
the Ataris.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
stuff like that. Definitely Blink-182. That was huge. I feel like we played
yeah,
almost every Blink-182 song we could play.
yeah.
Um, but it was cool, man. It was really fun, and I'll tell you the name of that band. I'll tell you how young we were when we came up with it. So
Okay.
we were in seventh grade, and the name of the band was called. You ready for this? The Fluffernut Cases. That was the band name, which is terrible. But dude, you don't know any different when you're in seventh grade.
Yeah,
So, and
yeah.
to be fair, I was
Your sense of
hanging out.
humor is the same now. It's probably a badass name.
What's that?
Your sense of humor didn't change.
No, no. I mean, dude, to be fair, that name, like, I don't know where it came from. And then it that like lasted, and then that same band changed the band name because it was a terrible band name to a band called A Theory in Progress, which I would say was a little bit better. I mean, it was at
Well,
least
that
like,
sounds more metal.
yeah, yeah. Well, we weren't playing metal at that time. That's the
Yeah.
funny thing. Like, we weren't. We were playing a lot of
Mhm.
like Blink-182 style tunes and Newfound Glory, and man, I'd love to see that old set list, to be honest with you. I mean, we weren't playing shows, but we still had set lists. We were playing in a basement and all that good stuff. But yeah, so it was like seventh, eighth grade is when I started playing drums in a band with other people. And then I started developing like relationships with other people. I remember I was a freshman in high school, and there was these two kids named, one kid named was Vince. I don't remember the other kid's name. I want to say Matt, but Vince was a killer guitar player, but he was in like 11th, 12th grade. He was like older than me, and he wanted to play drums with me for some reason. I was like, this is super cool, but why? Like,
Mhm.
I'm a freshman in high school. I'm like a dweeb to you, man, and you want to like hang out with me and play drums with me. So I thought that was really cool. But then from there, I started the whole and early ending project. Well, I didn't start it, but I started with other people.
You didn't
And we
start
just
the
got,
early ending, an early
oh,
ending.
I did start that project. But I don't want to take full responsibility because there was a couple of us that started it.
Oh
I don't want to
yeah,
feel
yeah,
like
yeah. But you didn't
I
join an
started
already
it.
established band, is what we're saying.
Yeah, no, it wasn't established. We built it from the ground up.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So the early ending. What grade was that?
um officially, I would say late ninth, 10th grade.
Okay.
That's
So
when
when
we
you
really.
first started getting into playing with these people, who were you had like drumming heroes and all that kind of?
Oh yeah, for sure. I used to go to drum clinics and stuff like that when I was kids, like when I was a kid with my dad.
Yeah.
We'd go, and Dale's would always host this awesome like drum clinic like once every 3 or 6 months or something like that. And I got to see like Dennis Chambers, Dave Weckl, Marco Miniman, Steve Smith, like staples in the drum community,
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
literally. Like, guys that like, you go and see, and like imagine being like in 10th grade or ninth grade and seeing these guys, and you're like, God, like, will I ever be that good? And these
Mhm.
guys just make everything they do seem so easy. And I remember the one guy, Marco Minima, man, he was like, I'll do like 15, 16 with my right hand and 3, 4 with my left. And on my feet, I'm doing a paradiddle. And it's like, dude, I've been playing drums for what, almost
That
20
guy's a
years now.
robot.
And I can't do that stuff
Yeah,
still.
yeah.
Even, yeah. And I even have a fake leg that I can tell what to do at any point. So I'm kidding at all.
You're
So
right. Yeah, you get computer activated.
yeah.
Yeah. So who are your favorite rock drummers then? Like when you were if you're gonna copy somebody in seventh, eighth grade, who are you copying?
Oh man, that's a tough answer. I mean, Travis Barker for sure.
Yeah.
I was listening to a lot of like Limp Bizkit at that time.
Uh-huh.
A lot of Newfound Glory, a lot of AC/DC. I was always a huge AC/DC fan.
I still
Um,
am.
and I am too, very much. And a lot of people have a lot to say about that drummer dude, but he does what's expected and he
Yeah.
plays the right part.
But yeah,
Um,
yeah. That sometimes that is the right thing to do.
right. Well, and it's funny because like it's when I was a kid, it was always like play more notes, do more, be busy. And then when I lost my leg, I had to learn how to like really fill space by playing less. And like AC/DC drummer is a perfect example of
Mhm.
that. You can literally play the most basic 101 drum beat, 101 rock drum beat. 1 and 3 on the kick and 2 and
Yep.
4 on the snare, and like you can make a killer song out of it. And that's literally where I started once I lost my prosthetic. It was like going back to that. Anyway, so AC/DC was a huge influence prior to losing leg and then after. It's funny because there's kind of like, like I can say I started playing music when I was, young and 4th, 5th grade. And, I had these drummers I was influenced by, but then like, it was almost like my life completely reset when I lost my leg and had to learn it all again, So I have like a whole nother set of drummers that like I was influenced by on a whole nother level because I had to relearn. Like when I lost my prosthetic, or when I lost my leg and had a prosthetic, like I quite literally went back to the drawing board and pulled out books that my original drum teacher had given me and was like, yo, like start learning these again. This is what you need to learn how to do, but now with your left leg, not your right. So little off topic there, but yeah, man. I mean, like
get to it.
Yeah. There's a lot of dudes that it's hard to explain. I listened to everything when I was young. It didn't matter what it was. I was downloading and put it on my iPhone.
That's what I think people should do. As don't be that. I say don't be that choosy. Play whatever you're capable of playing, and always push the envelope of what you can play.
Absolutely.
Yeah, don't go, I don't like that band. Well, can you play that band? Because like, that's the other thing is like, later in life, sometimes you play stuff that is not your favorite music.
Right, exactly. Well, I think if you love what you do or love like what your hobby is, you'll play whatever is on your plate, man. Like it doesn't matter if it's rock, metal, blues, punk, whatever it is. And that when I was learning how to play drums, I literally was playing. I mean, I would go from a rock book to a fusion book to a jazz book. I wanted to learn it all because I wanted to be that good at my craft. I didn't want to just be good at playing rock drums. Like that's what I wanted to do professionally, but that's not what I was learning to do.
The best rock drummers are not one-trick ponies.
Right, exactly. So, and like I said, like I think if you love your passion that much, you learn it all. You don't just do one. So.
Yeah. So, or an early ending. So that was your earliest like real serious band.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's like 11th, 10th, 11th grade, 9th, 10th, 11th grade.
Yeah.
Was that everybody, you and Greg?
So Greg came in when I think we were in 11th grade. It started with me and I'm trying to remember, honestly, at this point, who was all in the band. So it was a guy named Craig Kaufman, who was a really solid guitar player. Alex, who was the singer actually in the band, ended up being the bass player at that point. Then a guy named Ben, who was playing guitar. And then one of those guys left, and we brought this guy named Justin Wance on, who played guitar. And then kind of from there, we started putting together this super lineup, if you'll call it that, to try and make something of this. And when you're 10 years old and you got a bunch of killer musicians in a room, like you can really put something together, and that's what happened. And then all of a sudden, before we knew, we had like all of our friends coming out to our shows. And before we knew it, it wasn't just our friends, it was people that we didn't know. And then
this was all original?
All original, not one cover. I think we actually we did 2 covers in that band. It was Cowboys from Help from Pantera, and Rage Against the Machine, Killing in the Name of It. And we honestly did those just for fun, more so than like we weren't a cover band. We did all originals. So and we hardly ever played those covers live. Like we might have played them in if we were doing like a bar or something. Like at like Dewey Beach, we'd like throw like Cowboys from Hell in or something, just so people could find a way to relate to our music. We're a metal band, and it's not easy to relate to a metal band if you don't like the music. That's the truth.
Or know the music, more importantly.
Or to know the music, right? And people just think that we're on stage like banging our heads, screaming into a microphone. It's like, yeah, it is what we're doing, but like we are actual musicians at the end of the day. So.
So the jump from like pop punk and that to metal, that's kind of a big jump.
Yeah, not planned at all.
Huh?
Not planned at all. It was not intentional.
So you had to find your sound, and it landed into an early ending. What they ended up when you started the band, it was just like let's see what we can do.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and it wasn't geared towards anything. I mean, we started. I think everyone starts off by playing songs that they like, and I think I've noticed you do that a lot with your classes, where you're like, let's learn this song because like you've heard it, you know what it sounds like, let's try and recreate it. So like that's kind of how I think when you get together with a band at that age, you don't say let's get together and write metal music. You're like, let's get together and play these bands that we like listening to, and then someone shows up with a guitar riff, and then all of a sudden there's a drum riff over the guitar riff, and you're writing songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember like the first, like we always were writing songs, but like I remember the first song we wrote that actually made it to a record. It was like I just remember like getting up from the drum kit and be like, I was like in 10th grade at this time. I remember just being like, this is what we need to be writing. This is the kind of music that like is actually good, and like we're not just putting mush together, you know. So that was like I remember, I'll never forget that day.
You
I
still
almost
have
like
that? You still have that recording?
yeah, oh absolutely, yeah, 100%, yeah.
You didn't post it on Facebook.
Oh, I mean, on Facebook wasn't even a thing then.
Well,
So
I'm saying now, like
oh no,
I
no,
archive my stuff.
that stuff's in the archive somewhere, but I
Yeah,
don't.
that would be interesting to hear, though.
Yeah, and it was all really good
I'm a
stuff.
nerd. I'm a nerd when it comes to this. I want to hear where you came from.
Yeah,
Like I want to hear what early ending sounded like when you were 14 years old.
it was cool, man. It was good music, but it wasn't great. It was enough to like be like, okay, this band is, you know, these kids are kids, and they're writing songs that are like somewhat tolerable. You know what I mean? And then once we pulled into this one dude named Justin Wance, he went to CV. Once he joined the band, that's when we went from writing like good music to writing like, in my opinion, phenomenal music. And to like, if I ever met a group of kids that was in 10th grade, and I'm not trying to sit here and talk ourselves up, but that was writing as good as music as we were at that age, like I'd be like, give me your money, like how, you know what I mean? Like let me record your band, like let's do everything we can to put it there. And it's really hard to find that. I'm not saying we were the best thing around.
Well, it was a different world back then.
It was a different world back then, but I just remember like I don't think we didn't know we were that good when we were that young, to be fair. So I'm not going to sit here and think that we were writing the best thing that ever came out, but I just, you know, like now I look back and I'm 30.
It's pretty astounding what you did.
Yeah.
Such a
Yeah, you like listen to those records and it's like, man, like I've been recording records professionally for 8 to 10 years, and I have yet to see a band like with that potential at that age. I record bands that great all the time, but not at that age. It's really seldom.
So this band takes you through high school. When did you graduate?
2007.
Okay, so you graduate in 2007. This takes you through high school. It gets you to see different parts. You guys toured.
Yeah, so we toured in high school, not during the weeks, but in high school we would tour on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, depending on where the show was. But I remember like us, you know, going out to like Pittsburgh and in Ohio, like in high school, and coming back and having to go to school after getting home at like 8 o'clock on a Sunday night from driving back from like 8 hours away the next morning. Yeah, it was just crazy, man. And like seeing that at a young age, I mean, you're fearless when you're that young, man. Like you have no worries in the world. You don't care if your van breaks down. You don't care if you have money to eat, because you know, or at least hopefully know, that like someone's gonna buy you dinner. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, so then, you know, graduate high school.
Were you living off of t-shirt money even at that age?
Like selling shirts or making shirts?
Yeah, selling shirts, not making shirts.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that's part of the reason why we got into what we're doing now. I mean, we weren't like making a lot of money doing that project. Like, but there was a lot of passion, a lot of heart in what we were doing. And the nights that we made or did well financially were because we sold a bunch of merch, like straight up. And part of the reason why like me and like the guys that are my partners get into are into what we're into now. And that's why we try and fuel other musicians with like affordable merch so that they can, you know, buy a shirt for $7 to $8 and be able to sell it for 15 and make 100% on it. So yeah.
Okay, so now by the time you graduate from high school, you're thinking what are you going to do?
Well, I mean, the goal was tour. And myself and 3 of the other guys were all on the same page with that. We had one guy who was like, I'm going to school. He went to college. He still played with us for a little bit. And then after that, he, you know, kind of fell off because we were trying to tour as much as we could. And we did a fair amount of touring, but that was the goal, man. It was like tour. And then when we were 19, we kind of landed like our first like DIY big tour, and we toured with a band that was called Texas in July. And like both of us were kind of like neck and neck in the industry at that point, where you know, they're from Lancaster, we're from Harrisburg, we're both kind of have the same amount of steam right now. And that was like, you know, we were going up to shows and like people were showing up without like, any big bands supporting the act.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was really cool. And that was actually the tour that like our accident happened in. So
So this was July 10th, 2009.
yeah,
Tell
2009. I'm pretty sure it was 2009. When I sent you that date earlier, I was like,
the
man,
2009, 2008.
it was either 2009 or 2010. And it's funny that like I don't even
I
think
think
about it.
2009.
Yeah, it would have been 2009. So it's funny though, because like I've just been dealing with like that part of my life for so long, I almost forget when it happened. And it's not like you ever forget, but
What happened? Tell us. You were
So we were on the last leg of this tour. We were 4 weeks in out of a 5-weeker. And we were driving from Spencer, Iowa, which is like northern mid part of the country.
Mhm.
And then we were driving from there down to Springfield, Missouri. And yeah, like we drove all night long. It was like an 18-hour hike from Spencer to Spring City and or Springfield, sorry. And I drove all night long, and it was like the worst weather I've ever seen. It was like we were in the middle of Tornado Alley. So like, imagine being like 19 years old and you're like, this is all happening around you. And like, there's rain, it's hail, there's lightning, and you're like driving, holding on the steering wheel, thinking like, where's this tornado at? Like,
You
it's
were the
gotta,
driver.
what's that?
You were the driver.
So I was the driver overnight. So like, it's just ironically, we drive through like the craziest weather I've ever driven through. And like, somehow we survived that. So the next morning I drove for like, 10 hours. The next morning, me and Greg swapped spots and I went to the back of the van and slept, and he started driving. And, a couple hours later at 1:30 in the afternoon, like of like hour 17 of an 18-hour drive, this like freak thing happens. Where we're driving, we're on a 2-lane highway with no median or no divider. A lady has a heart attack, clips the back end of a car hauler, and comes at us literally like perpendicular to our van. And we smack them, and our van literally goes like this, and the trailer veered off the other way, came disconnected from the trailer, and that was the beginning of a new life. Little did we know. So but yeah, it was a very awful, awful situation. I mean, I was in the back of the van. I was sleeping when the accident happened, woke up for the accident for like, a half a second, at least it felt like a half a second. And then woke up several minutes later, like with the van on its roof and me being the only one left in the van, like quite literally.
Mhm.
And I woke up and I like obviously can tell what's going on because I'm not like concussed. I'm not bleeding from like the head or anything. And I'm screaming for my life saying like, someone get me out of this van. And I'm sure I was swearing in there too. So get me out of this van.
You.
Yeah, not me, right? So I'm like, get me out of this van, get me out of this van, screaming for my life. There's glass everywhere. Like I said, I'm on the roof of the van. And I remember 2 of the guys from Texas in July, because we were all traveling in the same van, came and pulled me out. And my leg obviously was like completely twisted and facing the opposite way. Quite literally, my foot was facing backwards rather than forwards. So not only my foot, but like from the knee down. So it dislocated in several spots at the knee. Ripped a couple major arteries when that happened in the leg. And that's actually how I ended up losing my leg, was lack of blood flow over a course of time, which was, when you're that young, man, you're stubborn and you don't realize like how serious the situation is until like you come home and you're 6 months into this recovery process of them trying to save the leg that you have, and they say, hey, like your leg's dead. That's why you're going into shock and shaking and
Yeah.
convulsing essentially. So we're going to take your leg, and like you're like, whoa, it's heavy. It's a very heavy thing.
Mhm.
But I had a killer support group, man. Like my parents, like my friends, my family, like everything. I couldn't have been in a better situation for what happened. I
Mhm.
couldn't have been in a better situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, which
Well,
is amazing.
the other thing is everything that has happened since
Oh yeah, I mean, and it's
has a new spin on it now.
right.
You're
Yeah,
not
it has.
you're no is not an option.
Yeah,
No is
there's
not.
days it is, but when you're
No.
young, man,
At the end of the day, you're gonna rise up.
yeah. And I blame the people around me for that, man. I mean, like my parents are phenomenal people,
Yeah.
grandparents, like the manager of my band at the time, Rick Gadd, like he's phenomenal. Greg, Hershey, like I had like this circle that was like unbreakable.
Yeah.
It really was. So
That is
yeah.
wonderful. Rick Gadd's
I mean, it still makes me emotional, man. I mean, it really does. So I mean, I've learned to deal with it. I used to not be able to even have a conversation about this stuff. So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
cool to be able to sit down and do this. So
That's what that. Yeah. So Rick Gadd was
yeah,
your manager.
yeah, he was our manager. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. So he was like, I knew Rick Gadd from Big Double Mista.
yeah,
Was
that
a
was
side
legit.
band, one of their side bands. So it's like, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, he's somebody I need to talk to.
Oh, dude, he could tell you. Oh my gosh, dude, he saw it from a whole nother perspective, man.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing, and but it's funny. Him and a friend of mine, Ducky, who ended up being a bandmate later in life, drove down to pick me up in Missouri when the accident happened.
Okay.
Which was really cool because like I couldn't fly home because I had what was called an external fixator on my leg.
Yeah.
Um, essentially a bunch of rods and pins
Mhm.
sticking out of my leg, and I was not able to fly because I would have taken up too much space on the plane and it wouldn't have been safe for people around me or whatever. So Rick and Ducky rent this handicap van from here in Lewisberry, PA, and drive almost 20 some hours to pick me and my parents up in Missouri. Everyone has already gone home at this point, and I'm still stuck at this hospital in Missouri. So like, it's just funny, man.
You're the only one who was injured in that way.
Yeah, right.
That's a
Yeah.
miracle.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of like heavy damage. I mean, everyone had something, I mean, like Greg somehow managed to be driving this van and be in a head-on collision and only have a couple staples in the back of his head. Meanwhile, the guy sitting next to him had like a multiple compound fracture in his right leg. And the guys directly behind him in the first row of the van were the guys who got it the worst, like straight up. They were the guys who were, the palate of their mouth, the roof of their mouth was snapped in half and knocked out several teeth, and sockets of their eye, like the bone that your eye socket completely smashed and reconstructed. Those are the guys that got it the worst. When
Texas
you
and
look,
July guys.
dude, believe it or not, they walked away with some scrapes and bruises, and a couple of the guys had like a broken limb or stuff like that. But
And they were in the same van.
yeah, all in the same van, man. It was just weird. It was weird how that all worked out. That like I'm not trying to sound like any kind of way or bitter, but like it somehow worked out. Like their guys walked away with like the least amount of scratches on them, and it's like, and we were all scattered out through the van. It was like a guy from my van, a guy from Texas, a guy from my, we were all scattered out through this whole van. There was 11 of us in this 15 passenger van. And I'd say like me and my singer and my bass player and our tour manager, Sam, those were the four people that got hit the hardest. And, we're all mentally, physically, some of these guys are back to normal. We all have scrapes and we all have, cuts and bruises that'll never heal. But, like when you looked at these guys, they looked like they were really messed up.
Yeah.
Imagine a car at 65 miles an hour hitting you in the face. But everyone survived. That's the miracle. Like, how did we all walk away from this? Because you look at a picture of the van, dude, it's a miracle. You'll be like, how did anyone walk away from this, let alone 11 guys,
Yeah.
So
That is it, the miracle. So you get home and there's a couple months go by before they take your leg.
Yeah, so accident happened July 10th. On September 24th, they took my leg. So it would have been about, 3.5, 4 months
Okay.
of trying to mend what was called a broken leg at that point, and they did a bunch of surgeries and stuff. And I had what was called foot drop syndrome. Essentially my foot died from the accident and didn't get enough blood. So it just stayed down. I was stuck in this one position. They kept trying to get it up. Turned out I was like extremely sick and had like staph and gangrene and all this stuff. And they didn't know this because, why would they? So, yeah, it's crazy though.
Okay. So you come through that, you get out of the hospital in what, 12 days?
So I was at Hershey for, I don't even think it was 12 days. I was in Missouri for 12 days at that hospital. But I spent man, that's crazy. I don't even remember. I want to say it was about 2 weeks in the hospital at Hershey too.
Okay.
It was around about 2 weeks. It was like 10 to 14 days.
Yeah. And then it wasn't long at all before you're getting back to the idea of, okay, let's get this drumming thing back into it.
So I was already in gear at that point. and playing a couple shows with this external fixator in my leg. Believe it or not, man, I'd go to these shows and I'd have my foot propped up, sticking out from the kit like this. And I'd have this kick drum on my left side. I'd have everything, you know what I mean? Everything I need. And I'd play. And I did like 1 or 2 shows like that.
Okay.
And then
that's before you lost your leg.
that was before I lost my leg. I was still literally mending from the hospital at that point. Yeah. And then,
and it was metal.
It was metal music. I was headbanging. I was swinging the arms. I was doing as much as I could.
Okay, so now, there's this convalescing thing that you're going to build up. You lost your leg, and now we got to relearn how to play the drums. You were right foot dominant before,
mm-hmm.
And then with I guess if people don't know, most times drummers have, one hand is stronger than the other for whatever,
Mm-hmm.
We're not robots. One foot is better than the other because one foot does all the work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to switch your technique around.
Right.
Okay. So that becomes a left foot, you're left foot dominant. Now, what did your right foot then do? Was it the double bass?
So for a long time, it just hung there.
Okay.
That's all it did. Because I didn't have a right foot and I didn't have a prosthetic. It took me a while to get fitted and properly fitted for a prosthetic and to a point where I could actually use this thing to actually drum with.
So how long did that take?
Man, I really don't even remember. I would say there was about 9 months to a year that I spent after my amputation without a leg, like no prosthetic, no physical leg. And that's when I developed the skill with my left foot. But then I got my first leg, and I obviously didn't, you're a prosthetic foot. You don't have an ankle, you don't have toes, you don't have feeling, all that stuff. So you got to imagine having this thing attached to you that was never attached to you before. And my buddy Nate, who plays in a bunch of bands, Nate Young is his name. His dad owned a welding company, and he took one of my drum pedals, the right one specifically, and built this these walls out of aluminum that attached to the pedal so that I could put my foot in there and it wouldn't slide to the left or right. It would just stay in place to some extent. And that's kind of where I started incorporating having a prosthetic leg with my drums. Was that was the beginning of this is going to be something that I can use. I obviously don't need that anymore because after doing it for 12 years, I've developed muscle memory. I know what it feels like if this prosthetic foot is on a pedal or on the floor at this point. So so that was how that.
So there's a video out there that the Matt Greiner.
Yeah.
That is because you have friends that through this whole thing, it's everybody's rooting for you.
Yeah, I had.
Because you have good energy. You never, a jackass.
Well,
okay.
So Matt
Greiner, but he's that is everybody looking for the Logan Summey and Matt Greiner video. It's you guys are head to heading. And this is probably when your leg was pretty new.
Yeah, pretty new. Yeah, I mean, the leg I had in that video, if I remember correctly, was one of the first, one of the first 1 or 2.
They didn't get it right at the first shot. They didn't get your leg right the first time.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's. I don't think you ever fully get it right because even now, 12 years in, I still have days where my leg does not feel good or does not fit right, and then I have days where it's not even there. Most of the time, you can't even tell I have it, or I can't even tell I have it.
Yeah.
But at that early on, I was still spending a lot more time not walking than I was walking.
Matt Greiner was a friend of yours from August Burns Red. He's the drummer for August Burns Red. But explain that whole video.
Yeah. So, I mean, long story short, man, me and my band, we were touring. We did a week with the guys in August Burns Red. It was really cool. And Matt, obviously knowing that we were from the same general area, was dude, I love your story. I love what you're doing. I see that you're playing a pretty crappy double bass pedal. And I was playing a $200 bass pedal at that point. He comes up to me and goes, "Here you go, man," and hands me a slightly used DW 9000 double kick pedal, which if you know anything about that pedal, that's like a $700-800 pedal, maybe a little bit less, but I mean, that's not a cheap piece of gear to just give to someone. And he was like, take this. He's like, you deserve it. You're working really hard. Like when
you were touring with one leg.
one leg, I would spend a lot of time.
That didn't stop your touring.
Not at all. Not at all.
That is wonderful. See that? I didn't know.
Yeah.
That is wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we did it, man. Every tour we had crutches that we would take. I had a wheelchair. I had like 1 or 2 prosthetic legs, a shower chair. I mean, like quite literally we traveled with a handicapped person. That's what I was like. I was very mobile. I was 20, 21 years old. You know, when you're 20, 21 years old, man, your muscles and your bones, your body responds so much easier than it does even at 33. So, yeah. So anyway, so Matt like gives me this pedal and he goes, I love what you're doing. Take this. He's like, here's my number. Give me a call when I'm back from tour in a couple of weeks. He's like, I want to do something with you. Yeah. And I went down there and like, you know, I spent a day with him working on some drum stuff and him like trying to help develop like something, you know, out of something that I was not familiar with doing. And then the next day we shot a video. And it was really cool. It was really well orchestrated. And I remember like when it released, like all my friends were like, dude, this is so cool. Like, because August Burns Red to like me and my friends and the people that I grew up around was like
they're heroes.
Yeah, heroes, man, killer band. And like now they are like who they are. I mean, like probably one of the top 5 metal bands in the country, probably the world. And you know, and like they're whoever would have thought, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really cool, man. It's really neat. But I mean, it's far from that. I mean, our relationship, you know, we remain friends over the years, but we don't talk, you know, and that's okay because I'm doing what I'm doing, he's doing what he's doing. And you know, when you're a famous drummer in a band, your time is limited. So.
Yeah. And he gave it to you. That was wonderful. Now, all probably around the same time, you have no leg for a year.
Yeah.
And then you had this idea that let's get into recording.
Yeah, that's pretty much the time.
You did recording all along because you have a band.
Yeah.
Okay. But when did you first get into recording? First of all, like probably in high school?
I mean, if you really want to go back on it, like I remember working on the house computer before everyone had their own computer. We had one computer in our house and I downloaded a program called N-Track. I think I was in like 7th or 8th grade and like literally running mics from, it just made no sense. So technically been recording since then, but as far as like really getting into it and having experience, Greg had a laptop that we would record stuff on and I'd record like a digital drum kit, like on a electronic drum kit. I'd record stuff and he'd put guitar over it. So that's kind of where it started. And that was like right around like 1920 when we started doing that. But then I really got my own computer and my own software and all that stuff about a year or so after the accident. And that's like when I really started getting into it. It was like, I'm going to make this a career. Like this is like something I can do as somebody who's partially disabled and like still enjoy like drums and music and working with clients and being a part of that. But also if like I have a bad leg day or like I can't put my leg on, I can take my leg off and still work with a client. And that's happened numerous times. That's happened so much. So,
you often have bad leg days now?
Very seldom. It's very seldom, but it's kind of one of those things that's unpredictable. Like I could go 9 months, not skip a beat, and then, you know, all of a sudden for like a month and a half, I'm down, you know, not a month and a half, that might be an exaggeration, but sometimes it does take a while to bounce back if something is not fitting properly or, you know, but yeah.
So this is the beginning of the Third Leg Audio.
Yeah. Yeah. In some ways. Yeah. I mean, I started that mostly at my parents' house. I mean, it wasn't even Third Leg Audio at that point.
Yeah. This is the beginning stages. Like anything that you're creating stuff, at first let's get into this. Let's get our fingers dirty. And then we're trying to figure out what things are going to look like and what things are going to feel like. And eventually things start to bundle up into cool. That's how creation is.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know the outcome.
Right.
Oftentimes, like you talk about an early ending when we started a band. What kind of music are we going to play? We don't know.
Yeah, we're just going to play people's songs that we like.
Yeah, you know? and then and that leads to bigger and bigger and bigger and greater things. And then
Yeah.
well, so then Third Leg Audio. So that happened. When did that start? When did that whole thing start? You
So officially, I mean, if you want to talk like on the books and creating like the DBA and a bank account, all that stuff, it started when I was 25. Now, mind you, I've already been recording for like 3 to 4 years prior to that out of my parents' basement,
Mhm.
working on like buddies projects and stuff like that, like
Mhm.
stuff where I was like, buy me lunch and I'll record stuff all day because I was just so hungry. I wanted
To
to have,
learn.
yeah, I wanted to learn. I wanted the experience. And then, we finally settled like a dispute from the car accident and stuff like that. And I was like, what can I do with this money to like better my existence and my career and like invest it in myself so that it makes sense for me in the long run. I started looking at places and started like researching, like properties and looking for a property with a dude named Jim Beedorf, who is a killer drummer in the Harrisburg area, phenomenal musician, and he also somehow managed to take me under his wing and was like, I want nothing. Like, I want nothing from you. I want to help you out. Like, I believe in what you're doing. I would like to think he thought I was a good dude at that point. That's why he was like, I want to help you. And he shadowed me for like, dude, it was like 3 or 4 months. And he'd come pick me up where I was living at the time and be like, we're going to go look at 3 properties today. If you don't find anything, don't worry about it. And we'd go and look at these 3 properties. And after like 2 or 3 months, maybe a little bit longer, we finally stumbled upon the building we are in now.
Mhm.
I remember like turning it over like every day and just being like, yeah, is this something I want to do? Can I afford doing this? Like, can I really handle it? I remember I was living at the house I was living at the time. And I remember like coming down the stairs from where our bedroom was. And I like jumped down like the last like 2 or 3 steps. And I just said, screw it. Like, it's happening. This is it. Like, I'm committing to this. And I picked up the phone. I called him. I said, let's call that guy back from Mechanicsburg and like, let's lock this down. Like, I'm ready to do this regardless of who's along for the ride. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and then obviously
You
then I
didn't
started.
have, you didn't necessarily have Greg at this stage. You didn't have Greg with you at this stage.
Not directly. I mean, he was always a part of the picture, man. Like he was there every move of the way. Whether it was like, I asked him what we should do, or he was just kind of in the background. But when I moved into the place and we started doing renovations, he was like the dude that like spent a lot of time with me helping me build this renovation out. Like, we're trying to turn an office building into a studio. And he's the only one I knew out of all my friends that actually had somewhat of a construction background who knew.
It's a cool thing because I don't know what year I started going down to Rock Mill, and it was Rock Mill at that time when I started. It was Rock Mill was probably brand new.
And so Rockmill's been around as we're on our way to the end of our 6th full year. So I mean, it would have been 2000. I mean, we've been in this building for 8 on our way to our
It might
9th.
not even have been Rock Mill at that point.
Probably not. It was probably
Yeah,
just Third Leg Audio. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So every time you walk into this place, it looks different. It looks different. And so you have a vocal booth this time, a drum room. The
Oh,
second
dude, yeah.
time, yeah.
Now it's to a point where like I feel like everything
It's,
is gonna,
it's like everything though. As I said, it's you're creating stuff.
yeah.
Let's just do it, and then we'll figure it out later.
Yeah, which is a good and a bad thing. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, because
No,
you waste money,
not everything is a business plan, though. Is what I'm saying.
right? And when you're young and you're 25 and you're trying to, you still have a dream. I'm not saying that you can't be 35 or 45 and still have a dream, but like life changes those expectations.
Yeah.
You
And
have
imagine if you had a business plan and you lost your leg.
right.
That
Yeah,
was
exactly.
your success was if your success was contingent on that. So
Right.
so
Right.
so every time you'd walk into the place, it was a little different.
Right.
What is now the drum room or the main room was it the first time I was there? It was like where people would sit.
Yeah, and before that, it was just another office, and we took that office out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So, it,
so at some point, Third Leg Audio becomes this. Um, you record bands, you record all the things you record. What kind of stuff did you record?
I do whatever I could find. I mean, like I literally reach out to bands on Facebook and be like, "Hey, I see you're a new band. Like, do you have any music?" I'll record you for like $10 an hour. That's like literally the price I started charging when I opened this. And like any business owner knows that you cannot make money off of $10 an hour or let alone survive.
Yes.
So like here I am like scraping by, feeling lucky to make like anywhere from like 150 to $300 a week. And it's like, yeah, that's okay money if you're like a high school kid and like you don't have any bills, but like as a young adult, 100, especially a young adult that owns a business that is paying rent. I mean, dude, $150 to $300 a week is barely enough to make anything happen. So, I mean, I was eating for free as much as I could, and trying to do that whole thing, and I was still living the dream. I was still trying
You're
to
doing what you love.
doing what I loved, and I didn't give a crap. I didn't care how much money I had in my bank account. I was living paycheck to paycheck at that point. And so Third Leg Audio was essentially like a studio and a small live sound business. That's literally all Third Leg Audio was when I started this place. And I had other guys that were working out of the building doing their things too, but as far as what I was doing, that was all I was doing. And then it just kind of snowballed more.
How did Rock Mill come about?
So I had bought a screen printing press a couple years into the idea of what I was doing, because we had this huge warehouse and I was like, okay, I have all this space. Like, how am I eventually going to fill this someday?
So you rented the whole thing?
No, I just rented the studio portion in what is now the rehearsal space. And the rehearsal space was just like a storage room that we would store all of our gear in. And then the studio was like an office / recording studio that that me and two other guys shared at that time, and I was the only one doing studio recordings, and they were kind of running their like installation live sound event company. And then, like I said, like all of a sudden I was like, I have all this room, I'm gonna buy a screen printing press. And I had some experience, but not a lot. And that's kind of how we got our feet into the whole screen.
You had some experience. Was that like through making your own band t-shirts?
Yeah, so I my high school senior project in my arts class was like, it was like, you have to print like 3 shirts or whatever. And I was like, well, what if I print 100 shirts and like I pay for everything? And the guy was like, 100%, like, let's do it. So my shop teacher in school was like pretty much allowing me to create this like 100 t-shirts on the cost of the school. I paid for the garments themselves, but the ink and the heat and all the materials and all the stuff that the high school paid for. So it was, I probably never got shirts cheaper than I did. I think I probably still pay more now than I did when I was in high school, because now I got to pay the electric bill, I got to pay internet, so on and so forth. So yeah, it's just crazy how that works out. But
okay, so Rock Mill, the bigger picture was, we're not only going to record you, but we're going to work on branding your band.
Yeah, because like what do bands need? They need studio recording, but not every band needs a studio recording, because obviously bands record their own stuff and there's all these different engineers. But like, what does every band and musician truly need? Merchandise. Yeah, exactly. And that's how we profited when we were on tour. Like, we might have only been getting paid $150 or $300 a night, or occasionally like $500. That's not anything to split between 4 or 5 guys and pay for food and gas and hotels. You know what I mean? So like, how did we actually make money? Well, we personally never really made money, but there was merch sales every night, and that would take $150 night into a $500 night, or a $300 night into $1,000 night. And now all of a sudden we're actually able to fund a record and to fund more merch and so on and so forth. So
yeah, so merch is the thing that for everybody who's listening, you have an original metal band, or what is an original band? That's a tough thing, going into areas of, sometimes people don't hear your stuff. They don't know who you are necessarily sometimes.
Right.
And merch is the thing that is the that saves you on the road.
Yeah. Even for big bands too, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter the size of your band. Like, if you could be AC/DC, but you'll turn X amount of dollar guarantee into twice what it was, because you're selling merch.
Yeah,
everyone needs it.
$7 t-shirt turns into a $50 t-shirt.
Right. For those guys, they're probably paying $5 or $6.
Yeah,
and because they're ordering such quantity. But yeah, so
yeah. So what else about Rock Mill? What else do they do?
So, I mean, we do a variety of things in our facility. It's, obviously we have the studio recording. There's another guy who runs another studio in here. There's a video guy. There's a tattoo studio upstairs above the rehearsal space.
Yes.
There's a rehearsal space that 6 bands rehearse in, 7 bands on a weekly basis.
We have the rock band program at Rock Mill.
Yeah, the rock band program on Tuesdays.
Yes.
So there's like lessons and instructions happening, which is cool. And then there's like Greg's Bee business, and then there's the print shop, which that's like where like a lot of our effort is actually going nowadays, just because it's such a demanding thing, and like, only so many people need studio recording, but like everyone needs shirts. So and it's cool though, because like because we offer so many different things, like we have a lot of bands who are recording, rehearsing, and then also printing merch with us. And then when we do live events, they're using us for live events also. So it's kind of like, it's more than a trifecta. It's quadfecta, if that's even a word. But like, it's cool, and I love what I do, but it is very exhausting. You're constantly on call, you're constantly juggling emails, and it's a scheduling thing is really what it is. Like, if you can handle your calendar and your schedule very well, like something like this is very doable. But if you don't have someone sitting down, for X amount of hours a day, just literally managing those items, like it would fall apart in a second.
So you're the thing that keeps all that together.
I try to be. I mean, I try to do as much as I can. Probably more than I should. But that's just that's because I love it. And it's the dream that like I believe in. And I'd like to think that like my partners do too. And it's just not. It's not always like it's hard because like it's a very fine line between like the dream and like what's realistic for a business to succeed and make money and to profit for the future. And that's kind of where we are now. Like, we're trying to figure out what the future holds, and how we're going to make this something that can become a career and not just like a week to week thing. So.
Yes. Okay. So you, as a producer, you've done, every kind of music imaginable.
Yeah, quite literally.
Okay, you've done audiobooks, right?
Yep.
You've done probably jingles.
I've done jingles. Yep. I've done metal, rock and roll, blues, voiceover work, orchestra, symphonies. I mean, you name it, man. And I never discriminate. And it's kind of back to that thing originally, like when I was learning how to play drums, where I was like, I want to learn every single part of this. That's how it was with recording too, man. It was like, I don't care what it is. Like, I want to learn how to do it. And I want to do it to the best that I can do. I'm not saying it's going to be the best thing that's ever been done, because that's
arrogant,
hard to achieve, and that's all perspective at the end of the day anyways. But I mean, it was just like, I was hungry. I wanted it. I don't care what it was. If you were going to help me pay my rent, I was going to give you everything I had to develop whatever it is that you're bringing to my table.
So what is the role of a producer?
I mean, in my opinion, the role of producer is to take something that is already provided, and to try and make it better. And that may look differently depending on the style of music or the type of project it may be. Sometimes it's just as simple as like, cutting up a tune and turning it into something a little bit tighter than what they came in with, building a transition out, helping put together like a chorus that is a little bit more filling and bigger feeling than just like, one guitar, bass, and drum set. Like, let's put 2 guitars on there. Let's put a lead guitar on there. Like, maybe let's stack in like this arpeggio or a tambourine or something to really build it out and make it exciting. So in my opinion, a producer is someone who makes something not necessarily better, but different or more well thought out than what was there.
Yeah.
And
then there's help the artist to see a bigger sound.
Yes.
Possible. And sometimes cut stuff out that does not suit the song.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just did that with a band a couple of weeks ago, man. I mean, that happens all the time, but they had this section that they were like head over heels when they were like, this is so cool. I think they were just fascinated with the part of the song more so than the song itself. And I was like, listen, guys,
didn't serve the song.
Yeah, listen to me here. Like, we'll do whatever you want because you're paying me. I'm working for you. But here's my suggestion. Let's dump this part. It does not work. And then after like having like a 5-minute conversation with them, they were like, you're right. I get it. Like, let's table this part. Let's use it for something else. Like
Yeah.
let's use it in something that, let's write a song based off of this part, not put this in this song because we have a part and we don't know what else to put here. Like your song will be better without it. And you don't even necessarily need to replace it. Just get rid of it. Like instead of the song being 4 minutes long, now it's like 3 minutes and 15 seconds, and it makes way more sense. So
all right, Dead. Tell us about Dead.
oh man, that's a project that's just started for fun, man. Big band that influenced me like middle to like later in my early 20s, or I'm sorry, mid to late 20s, was My Chemical Romance, man. I just like, I didn't understand it when I was young. I didn't get it. I thought like these guys are a bunch of emo, sad, crying dudes. Like I play in a metal band. I play in a metal band. This isn't cool. Like I don't get it. And then like as you evolve as a musician, you start to like listen to things. And I just remember like actually listening to this band for the first time and being like, this is like genius. So
they're a rock and roll band. They're one of the last rock and roll bands.
yeah, man, they're good at doing it too, man. I wish I could have saw it sooner, so I didn't. But yeah, so me and my buddies, like we got Derek from Observe, which you should have him on here, by the way. He's a great dude.
I would absolutely have him.
Yeah, he'll do it in a heartbeat because he loves this kind of stuff. But he he got asked to play a Halloween cover show, the same kind of show that I host every year. And he was like, we're going to do, I think it was Jewel. And I just remember he was like, do you want to play drums? I'm like, bro, of course I'll do it, but I can only name like one Jewel song. And I honestly don't even know anything else other than that. Like, why are we doing Jewel? He goes, oh, I just like Jewel. So like me and him and a couple buddies, like we're just hanging out. We went to Denny's for like dinner or something at like 11 o'clock at night. And My Chemical Romance came on the dude's stereo. And I'm like, Derek was like, man, this would be so cool to be able to do like My Chem. I'm like, why don't we? He's like, oh, we don't have the musicians to pull this off. I'm like, dude, we so have the musicians to pull this off.
Yeah.
So I like text Greg, I text Brandon, I text our buddy Steven, our buddy James. It was all people that like were actually working at Rockmill doing something. Like James was helping us print shirts. Steven was coming in setting up guitars. Derek was obviously recording records here all the time. And we put together this like this lineup that like all loves My Chemical Romance. And we did it as a joke, man. And we bought black t-shirts and we like took silver paint and painted on the shirts to make it look like we were in the Black Parade. And we put together this show, and dude, it was insane. Like people were jumping, crowd surfing. It was just a Halloween show. We were like, we should do this for real. And we did. And we put our first show on 6 months later, and it sold out before the show started. So, and I remember walking outside and taking a video with my phone, and there was a line of like 200-300 people down the block. I just remember being like,
that's what people want.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell have we created? And the guy,
well, you hear the thing is like you hear that you watch YouTube and everybody says rock and roll is dead. Rock and roll is not dead.
No,
like people, and it's not just people of that are 60.
Right.
that are this. In other words, the rock show, you just need a band that is your own.
Right. Yeah. And
that's a rock show. That's what's cool about Dead is you're going to see a rock show, even though
we're playing someone else's songs, we're still putting on a rock show.
Yeah. But you guys have makeup.
Yeah, makeup the whole 9 yards, man. Yeah. I remember the guy, the venue was Federal Tap House, which once was Dragonfly. And the guy said to me like halfway through the show when like we were settling up and doing that whole thing, and he goes, how do you do it, man? I said, I got lucky. That's all that happened. We got super lucky on this one.
You made good decisions because you didn't do Joel.
Right. Yeah. Because we didn't do Joel. We did a band that all of our friends wanted to see. Like, because My Chem at that time was not together. They were already on like a 4 or 5 year hiatus. Everyone wanted to see them. And this was before they got back together. So like everyone was just like, they were hungry for it. They wanted to see it. And like, in my opinion, we couldn't have had a better lineup of musicians to pay tribute to this, and it's like you had 6 guys in the band that absolutely loved the music and guys that actually knew how to play. And Derek, in my opinion, like if Derek didn't do the project, we wouldn't do it anymore, because I don't think there's anyone that I know that sings like he does. Yeah. The singer from My Chemical Romance is very
well, it's just cool that you two get to have a band together, even if
well, because we've spent so much time together in the studio, and I've spent so much time like producing and helping their band and being a part of that project for them and being there for them.
Serve the 93rd.
Yeah, and I feel like we've done some really fun tracks, and we've had countless memories that like I'll never trade in. And yeah, man, and to play in a band with him, I knew it was like, well, I know what he can do in the studio. Like, so I know he's the perfect guy for this live. Like, who else could do this? And
He's
obviously
front
knowing
man.
Logan, yeah, he was perfect. He was
I didn't.
perfect.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I think I saw Observe at an open mic once.
Yeah.
I think that's the only time I've ever seen him. But he with Dead, and he probably is with Observe. He's a front man, which is a dying art.
Yeah, it's
It's a
hard,
dying
man.
art.
It's very demanding. And it's funny, like once Derek became like the front man of Dead, I feel like that really helped him blossom into who he is now, a
Mm-hmm.
front man for his band, because he didn't have to rely, with Observe, it was all music he wrote, stuff that he created with those guys. And like the stress of being like, oh God, is the drummer playing the right part, or is the bass player playing the right part? Because he's in full control of all of that with that project.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for him to step into a band and be able to just have fun and play someone else's songs, and to also be able to rely on musicians that were, had a lot of touring experience and a lot of experience working with other musicians, I think like he really blossomed and was like, okay, this is like, I see how this works when you take all the other pieces away. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just supposed to entertain this crowd and do this. So it's been cool. It's been really fun.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, Logan. Thank you.
Yeah.
Those Rock Mill Industries, Rock Mill Studios. If you have T-shirts, if you have bumper stickers,
We have it all, man. I mean,
you have
lanyards, stickers.
embroidery.
We had sunglasses last summer. I mean, we're
Yeah,
doing it all.
you
So
do. You help bands with their merch. You teach. You have that rock band program. You have you Justin Hershey.
dude,
Yeah, we didn't
that
even talk
guy.
about him. But Justin Hershey's he's a big part of this.
Oh, huge, huge,
Yeah,
absolutely. And he's
sound
like,
reinforcement.
yeah,
And also any recording needs, go to Rock Mill in downtown Mechanicsburg.
yeah, we're doing it, man. We're busy
So we
and
can
we're
check them out.
juggling it somehow. So
I'll put a link in this video, and also links in the links of the Matt Griner
yeah,
and all that will be a part of this too. So
yeah, you
thank
could just see my my sweet mullet in that video because I had a mullet at
you.
the
Yeah, well, yeah, the emo mode.
now I look like almost like you, Rod. So
That's right. Well, imitation. Imitation is flattery and all that business. Thank you, everybody.
yeah,
Uh, thank you, Logan.
of
See ya.
course. Thank you. See ya.